Welcome to Deborah SES Radio Show, Self-Empowerment Strategies. Deborah K. Adams, M.A., is an international #1 best-selling book author, expert on education and prevention of domestic violence and all forms of violence. Deborah SES. I have lived it, I have studied it, and I have worked it. Deborah's consulting business, Self-Empowerment Strategies, SES, evolved out of working with thousands of survivors of domestic violence and other forms of violence over the past 2 decades. Experience, study and research, and practical application led to the development of the SES priorities and the 5 A's to authenticity. Experiencing violence is traumatic, and it reduces your innate ability to function at your highest level. Deborah and her guests will share their knowledge, skills, and strategies. Join them in living free of violence, with joy, and out loud. Here she is, Deborah K. Adams.
Oh, thank you very much. What a great introduction. I'm not used to this. This is my first show, my inaugural show on the Bold radio station, and I'm so excited to be here. I want to thank Kim, who invited me over, and I just want to let her know and everyone else listening that this is an exciting place to be. And I know I am in good company with a lot of other fantastic and exciting women leaders who are also holding their radio shows here. So you will have to pay attention to our schedules and this web station, because you're going to be hearing a whole lot more about us, okay? So thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Deborah, and I'm so excited to have this wonderful woman as my guest. And I have the fortune of knowing her through a joint project, and we have really connected on a special level. But what I want to share with you is just some words from her own biography. And this kind of will, I think you will fall in love with her just as I have. And this is what she's written. She says, I have been called an author, a speaker, and a writer. What I truly am is a storyteller. I am in love with words, whether they are rolling seductively off my tongue or curling delicately, angled crazily, or dropped poetically across a page. I weave a web woven of tales instead of from gossamer strands. And at this, I would love to bring Andrea from the green room. Andrea Dykstra.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks for showcasing my poetic side.
I do love that about you. You have many great skills and many gifts to share with me and our listeners, and in fact the whole world. Why don't you give us a little peek into your expertise?
Sure. So, of course, you and I have joked several times about this, that I have so many certifications that I should be certified. And I always like to preface that with saying that it is a journey, and that it took me some time to really learn these things in order to heal myself. And that's what I went out to do. So it wasn't an egotistical, I need to do everything. It was simply, this is what I need to do to heal. So I happen to learn these things to teach them. And probably most important for your listeners would be my skills as a life coach, and as well, obviously, my storytelling skills.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, but I'm quite often known as the empowerment coach, as a sort of a catch-all.
Okay, and that's important, and that's one of the reasons why we connect so well, I'm sure, is because we're kind of on that same vibrational line. I, too, have learned a lot in order to heal myself, and so I think this is a great way to showcase your experience. Let's tell the listeners how you and I met. Do you want to start?
Sure, I will. So Deborah and I met on the Missing Piece: A Transformational Journey, which was a collaboration of 27 authors from around the world. And how that began is actually we had a Facebook group that allowed the co-authors to speak to one another outside of the actual project. And yeah, Deborah and I, we just connected, and it's been great. We've been fortunate to have a few radio shows together so far, and really it's just always a joy to be on your show, Deborah.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I think the really wonderful part about our book project, Andrea, was the mission of the book, which was for people who had experienced something traumatic or big in their life that impacted them in a really meaningful way. And every single one of the beautiful women who authored this book with their chapters has the desire to help others. And so what we're all hoping for is that the readers will learn or get ideas on how to work through whatever it is they're experiencing, and maybe not have to go through the long healing process each of us went through as individuals. Do you agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the one thing that really got me excited about the project in the beginning was it was completely in alignment with what I do. I mean, I'm teaching women how to take back their personal power and release destructive patterns and unpack their trauma baggage. And, you know, coming from that place of taking 100% responsibility for the life they're creating. So when I saw the opportunity to share a story and actually help them initiate their own healing, that was just a draw for me right there to come in and join the project. Absolutely.
And I think my similar story is that having experienced violence in a really impactful way, and then my career began where I was working with other survivors who had experienced violence. And there's kind of this stigma in a professional kind of code of ethics, if you will, that says you're not supposed to share your own story, and you're not supposed, because then you're focusing on you. But what I have found in that it's a great way to build trust and relationship, and it's also a great way for people to know that you're a safe person and that they can talk to you and they won't be judged. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with that, Deborah. It's just been such an honor for me, because I often say I share my stories to initiate healing within others. And it's been the case that I've shared my stories and people then will come forward with their stories, and they've told me, you know, how much they've been able to heal just by listening to someone else who's gone through similar circumstances or even just any sort of trauma, and openly shared about it instead of having that sort of shame piece hanging over them. So it's been so inspiring to see all these people healing and wanting to share stories of their own as well.
Yes, and I think it's very rewarding as well to know that some of your words have impacted another person's life.
Oh, yes.
That's
so
kind of like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right?
Yes.
So I know, Andrea, that you have other books. Do you want to talk about those?
Yes, I'll give you a little, just a little taste of it. So during my last, I think the 11 months out of the last 14, I was basically bedridden. And what that actually afforded me to do was write. And so I ended up writing 8 books altogether. And it was quite the experience. It was the only thing I was really able to do was write and just sort of release, and that it was very cathartic for me. So it was just, I guess, exactly where I was meant to be, and I accept that it was that beautiful moment where I was able to move into alignment with my creative self.
Uh-huh.
So one of the projects that is within those 8 books is a trilogy called Shortcuts to Spirituality. And that has been getting a lot of attention because I've been sharing little pieces of that with people, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I noticed you used that hashtag, Shortcuts to Spirituality, and I wondered where that came from. That's awesome. Do you want to tell readers where they might be able to get those books?
Yeah, so the books aren't released yet.
Okay.
They will be released throughout the year. I'm hoping to do a 4-month release sequence so that one will be released, every 4 months, and that way throughout the year, the whole trilogy will be released. So if they want more information, they're welcome to go to my website, which is AndreaDykstra.com. And the new website, shortcutstospirituality.com, is in the design stages and will be up at the end of this month.
Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit more about your journey. What was going on with you before you became bedridden. Do you want to? Is that anything you'd like to?
Yeah,
share?
I think the journey itself was pretty important. What happened last year at this time actually is pretty incredible. The difference in energy and vitality and everything. I was bedridden. I was completely exhausted. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was going through what the medical community calls adrenal fatigue. And for me, what it actually initiated was what we like to call in the spiritual community the dark night of the soul. So through this disease, I was purged of absolutely everything. So all the constructs of my mind that I had created completely dissolved. And I started dealing with anxiety, which is something I've never experienced before. It took me completely by surprise. And I faced a decision, really. Should I go into the fear or just give up? And that's how desperate I had become. I remember writing that the introduction actually to Shortcuts to Spirituality was, it's sort of a poetic journal entry that started with, I can no longer see the face of God. I look into the mirror and I no longer see myself. I no longer recognize my own face. And that's how deep of a void I was in. And it was quite incredible actually to be going through that. I know at the time I may not have considered it to be this incredible piece of my life, but what it allowed me to do was really step away from my life and observe it and create these processes and then realign my life. So the first thing I did obviously was actually, do that compilation with you, The Missing Piece, and I wrote about the process that I designed called Touching the Fear. So it's pretty incredible to be able to share something of that nature, right after going through it.
Right, that's an extremely personal experience. Do you think that, so you were physically unable to motivate around? Right?
Yes, the adrenals are responsible for all the hormones in your body. So when they shut down, you're not producing anything. So my whole system was sort of in this, they call it fatigue, but I mean, for me, it just felt like death. It was death, but you're still living.
So all you had left was your mind.
Yes.
And your spirit.
Yes.
And you're trying to come to terms with that because you are a very active person, my dear.
Yes.
Tell the listeners some of your really wonderful and adventurous experiences. Tell us about going to Asia.
Oh, for sure. So Southeast Asia was absolutely a trip of a lifetime. I went with my husband, and it was his first time traveling overseas. And of course, I had already been around the world. So for me, it was really interesting to experience it with a partner. And I don't know if you know the story of how we met, but we literally met, fell in love, got married in 14 days. So
I hadn't heard that. Why you been keeping that under wraps? Thanks for sharing that.
Well, when your twin flame comes along and you recognize that reflection of yourself, it was just instant. There was no second guessing it. So,
that's wonderful.
And one of the first things we did was this trip around the world together. So it was very, very enlightening as far as relationships go because you're with a new person and you're going through all these experiences. And since he'd never traveled, everything was really quite new. And our concepts of the trips were totally different as well. I had packed one way and he had packed another way.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's a skill that you must practice.
That's right. But here I was prepared to, go into the wilderness and backpack through the swamps. And I had all my water cleaner supplies and all my gear for that. And he was ready to, for him, what, sort of roughing it meant staying in a lower class hostel.
Oh, wow. So he was a big environment change for him, too.
Yeah, it was. And it was an incredible adventure for us both. And actually, I just wrote about part of that adventure in the I Am Enough magazine that just came out today. So that was It was unique to be able to share that story as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you in Asia?
Just shy of 4 months.
Okay, and what was your purpose there? Did you?
Really, it was just to travel. It was a break because normally when I go traveling, I'm always doing either missions work with a philanthropic group, in the area, or doing a project or something like that, or leading a retreat. So for me, this was really a chance to just relax and indulge in everything without having to worry about looking after a group or taking care of a project or doing anything like that.
So that was a real time for you to build your relationship.
Yes, it was.
Well,
it was
that's wonderful. Most people don't get that kind of opportunity early on in their relationship.
Yes.
That's pretty unique, my dear.
It was. And it was interesting because I was in adrenal fatigue at the time, but I wasn't aware of it.
Oh my.
Yeah, so that was sort of added another layer to the experience for both of us.
Yeah. And so he was with you as you were healing from that.
Yes. Yeah, he has been absolutely by my side 100% the whole time. He's incredible.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
So you told me that before you started your shortcuts to spirituality and your journey there, that you had a lot of experience in accounting and shit. So how does one go from point A to B?
Yes. Really, no one believes me when I tell them I used to be in accounting because it's so far off anything that I do.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is that I went into accounting straight out of college, and at that point, I had not yet dealt with any of the abuse in my life, so I had not spoken to anyone about it, even though it had ended when I was 14, but I still hadn't, spoken out about it. So what really appealed to me was the tidiness of the accounting. It's, everything had its place, and as I was able to do that, I sort of felt like I was in control. It was one area of my life where I had control.
Sure.
So it's really interesting because as I outgrew that need for control and started to heal myself in other ways, I started looking at accounting and thinking, I would talk about it. I would say it's eroding my soul.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good to start realizing that. that was the cause of it. Well,
we all know when we need to move on, right? So that was sort of my little push to get out of there.
So did you go from accounting then into fitness, or was that in the same business?
Yes, no. So I went into fitness after that, and I think probably a lot of actual sexual abuse victims may go down this path just because, again, it's reconnecting with the body and learning how to look after your body. So for me, I went into the fitness, and I became a registered fitness trainer, professional fitness trainer, and then it turned out that wasn't enough. So I moved from that into becoming a sports nutritionist, and I just sort of kept moving forward because I knew there was more to what my clients needed, and I was trying to really serve that need.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that it's important because we're complex human beings, and most of us think that we're kind of one-dimensional, but we're so multi-dimensional that so. Your story is interesting, and I'm sure it is resonating with a lot of listeners because when I was 18, I didn't have any clue I would be doing what I'm doing today. And, you always wonder, wow, this is a big difference than what I thought when I was 18. So I think it's important to, I read a book, and I think it was Erica Jong, who talked about life in a series of 20 years. Like every 20 years, she started over with a new career, or she was telling the story of someone who kind of did that. And I kind of used that then to frame my life. And I thought, well, that just makes so much sense, because your first 20 years, you're growing, you're developing. The next 20 years, it's about, maybe for most people, it's about finding a mate and starting a family, building a home. And then the next 20 years, when you're in your 40s to 60s, you kind of see, well, I think there's a little bit more to life, and I don't know what that is, and I wonder what it looks like for me, and those kind of things. And then I'm just now approaching the next category, which is 60 to 80. And so I'm thinking, well, this has been a really good way for me to frame my life and give me a perspective on, so I don't feel like I'm flailing, wildly, because some people say, well, make up your mind. You can't make up. I can't make up my mind. There are so many things I want to know and do and try. And you are a living example of that. And we do joke about your certifications, but I think that's great. I think it's great to try and to learn, and don't, you know, you just don't say, I'm going to take this 4-week course here and get a certificate, and then I'm going to go take this. It's an evolving process, right?
Yes, for sure. I mean, we are dynamic beings. We're meant to flow and change and keep moving. So, of course, it makes sense that you're not going to know everything that you want to do when you're 20 and, and when you're 40 and when you're, it's always this constant state of flow. So I think it's beautiful that everybody keeps exploring, who am I? What do I have to offer this world?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people who say, well, I can't do that because I have a job and I have responsibilities. One way that helped me when I was feeling in that thinking process was I started volunteering. And that was a really great opportunity to try things out in a really non-threatening way.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, for sure. And I would...
Go ahead.
I was just going to speak to that when you say, because I get that all the time, I have no choice, right? Clients are constantly saying, well, I have no choice. And I think back to... in 2007, when I made a decision we were moving, my first husband and I were moving back to New Zealand, and I was literally in the airport, and I had called my mom in the morning, and I said, what if I don't want to get on the plane? And she just said to me, the very simple words, she said, then don't get on the plane. And I mean, it's that simple, yet it is complex because there's all the stuff about, okay, how do you tell this person that, okay, I'm not moving to New Zealand with you. I'm not going to be getting on that plane. I'm not going to be pursuing this life with you. I'm going my own way.
Yeah.
And I did that. I stood in that airport and I did not get on the plane. And I said, I'm not getting on the plane. And, there was obviously some conflict going on because his aunt was there she was literally saying, can't you just get on the plane and figure it out there? And I said, no, I can't get on the plane. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's really a matter of understanding that we always have a choice, even if it's between two, things that we don't consider choices.
And I think the general practice that people are thinking is that you should have just got on the plane and figured it out once you got there.
Yeah.
But that's not living to your own truth, right? To your own intuition. Let's talk about intuition. You and I are big believers in intuition. Mm-hmm. So you got that message from your intuition, right?
Absolutely. And it's such a juicy place to explore because it really does tell us exactly what we need to know. And it's not about even understanding maybe why you shouldn't do something. It's just understanding that it's a no for you or it's a yes, whatever the case is, and not even needing to know anything further than that, just trusting yourself.
And I think the really hard part about that is if what you're doing does have any kind of impact on someone else, how they try to convince you to ignore your intuition when you're already probably a little doubtful yourself, right?
Yeah, so it's that moving into the place where you're confident with your own intuition and actually trusting yourself. And of course, that's a process in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can that scenario that you described, I can see so many people in my life that have been in a circumstance where they just went ahead and did it anyway. And I think I might even apply that perspective to when I met and married my children's father, who was an abusive man. I think there are some things in my mind that I was thinking weren't a perfect match, and yet I found myself just agreeing and going along with whatever he proposed. And that was truly the start of a long involvement in a 17-year abusive relationship. And that really erodes at your self-confidence.
Yes. Yeah.
Your ability to think clearly.
Yeah.
And all those things, because you just kind of many survivors will say, I felt like I just lost my voice.
Yes, that's a great analogy for sure. And I think because we always talk about that too, as we speak out more, we say, I'm finally using my voice or finding my voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How important that is, and you think you don't have a voice when someone's controlling you, because you don't, because every time you use your voice, it gets demeaned or diminished, or you're told to be quiet, or, do what I say, all those kinds of things. And it keeps impacting on you to the point where you stop trying.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to inspire women to move out of situations with that. Well, anyone who's in a violent and abusive situation to make that choice. And as hard as it may seem in that moment, you do always have that choice, and you can get out of it, even if you need help to do that.
Yeah. You know, and I was working in a shelter, so for most of those 20 years, and amazing that how many people would come in and say, I just don't have any choices. I just don't have any choices. And I remember feeling that way too. And I don't know, you know, it's not a prescription you can write for someone how to figure that out, right?
Right. Yeah.
So tell me in your personal coaching how you would work with someone who feels in that sort of scenario in their life.
Yeah, when they feel stuck without choice.
Yes.
I would say pretty much that almost every single one of my life coaching clients feels that way when they come to me, because they're trying to fix something that's in their life where they feel stuck. So whether that's a limiting belief, or whether that's a weight issue, or a relationship issue, or a job issue, it's really all the same issue. And that's, they've lost their focus that they have a choice in the matter. So the underlying teaching of all of my strategies, all of my coaching strategies, whether I'm working specifically with a person on relationships, or with jobs, or with weight and health, is to teach them about choice, how to make informed, conscious choices versus the subconscious sabotage game that we play.
Right.
And that can include, of course, you know, as an empowering strategy, it's learning to listen to your own voice, and also learning to tune out the voices of others as well.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Yes.
And don't you, let's give the listeners hope that if they were to call you or become a client of someone in your field, the coaching field, is there an expectation of length of time? Like, I talk to you twice and I'll be fixed.
Yes. It's funny because in Shortcuts to Spirituality, of course, I explore that very option, which is that you can actually fix or change anything in one single conscious moment. Now, of course, it is. And of course, most of us aren't there. They're not in that single conscious moment. So there's processes that need to be, you know, undertaken first in order for them to actually get to the place where they can make that conscious decision. So for each person, it's obviously different. It really depends on their history, their experience, how willing they are to change. And of course, all the clients that I deal with, I specifically say that I'm looking for people who are ready to take 100% responsibility for creating their own life experience. So that in itself really helps the time frame for somebody healing. If you're willing to be responsible and not play the victim or say, you know, oh, it's so-and-so's fault.
Right. So is there a way you can help them assess that if they're not there yet? Sure.
Yeah, so there's tons of assessment tools that I use and processes and methods that we can just cut through right to the chase. And of course, being an intuitive, you know, you tap into what they're not saying half the time, so you just go right there. I'm very direct, so it works pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, again, I like that intuitive part. I think it's something we're born with. All of us have it as human beings, right?
Yeah.
But what age do we start to not listen to our intuition, do you think?
I don't even know if it's an age, because if you think about, for those of us who are trauma survivors, for instance, for me, I was kidnapped at 2.5 years old. I was raped before my 3rd birthday. I mean, my psyche started being eroded right from the beginning. So even if I believed as a small child that something wasn't right, or I had that knowing, I wouldn't have been able to really control that or tap into it or use it as a source of getting you with safety or trust. So I think it really depends on people's circumstances and their life experiences. It really begins to erode when you stop trusting yourself, essentially.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. We don't always recognize that when that happens.
No. That's right. It's quite often it's hindsight.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really good at hindsight.
Yeah, I think we all have a gift.
Oh, look what just happened. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So, I like to talk about self-empowerment strategies, and that's kind of your your connection to people too, is the empowerment piece. So, is there like one, two, or three, or any kind of number of tips you would like to leave with the listeners?
Sure. So, for instance, if someone comes to me and they want to land their dream job, it's very important that they define their passion right off the bat. And for many people, and it's not even about it doesn't have to be a job, they could be trying to define anything, but understanding where their passion is really key to empowering themselves to take that next step. So really getting a hold on what is my passion, am I living it? I know so many people, and I've done this myself when I was in accounting, I'm stuck. I have to do this for the money, and I need, those types of things start to, bog down your mind and your thought process. But really, when you stop and actually look, well, what is my passion? Most times it's completely in alignment with your gifts and talents. I mean, that's a very shortcut strategy to finding your passion right there. What do you enjoy? What are you talented at? And then see how you can turn that into a career or bring it into your relationship or whatever it is that you're looking to create.
So I like that. That's great.
Yeah. So finding your passion is key for sure. And then a lot of my clients come to me, they're trying to attract their soulmate or their twin flame, especially because I share lots of stories on, my twin flame and how easy that was supposedly, but they don't have all the backstory of the years of abusive relationships and, the other choices that I made. But when you think about that, when I really went into that process of, okay, I'm ready now to attract my twin flame, it became about becoming the one that I was trying to attract. So whatever it is that you are trying to attract in your life and realize that you are creating it, you need to become that, because then it will be reflected back to you. So if you're looking for someone who's kind, you need to be kind. If you're looking for someone who's truthful, you need to be truthful. It plays out in all of our mannerisms and emotions. So basically I just term it become the one.
I like it. Good job. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And then for me, a really interesting one that I came across for growing your business, and really I can apply it to mine as well, is when I was going through the different stages of my business. So until I got into life coaching, really, all of those were sort of a roller coaster. I'd be inspired and I'd be doing it, and then it's kind of dull, kind of lose the shine. And what I realized is that when you move into a place of complete authenticity, where you are expressing through your passions, through your gifts, through your talents, and that becomes, your main focus is being authentic to whatever it is that you want to create, then you can grow your business, you can improve your relationship, your family, whatever it is, by being authentic. And of course, you teach the 5 A's of authenticity, Deborah, so you know what that's all about.
Oh, yeah, that's really important to me, that authenticity piece. Well, I really appreciate you sharing those, and I hope the readers were thinking about that, maybe how to apply some of those to their lives, because there's no one size fits all. There's no one perfect answer for every person. And every time you and I talk, I always come away with little morsels of inspiration and wisdom, and I really appreciate that. I think that for me, when I was working in the anti-violence shelter, I was a support group facilitator, and we did it weekly. And so at the end of the group, I would say to the women, what do you want to talk about next week? And they would throw out some topics or some concerns that they'd like a little bit more information. I said, okay, well, besides our regular support stuff, I'll bring that to you. And what I found when I then researched that question or concern that they posed to me was, wow, that's really useful to me as well right now in my life. And that these women in these support groups are really teachers for me as well. I almost felt like they were giving more to me than I was giving to them. But I guess that, just that sense of gratitude that I could at least be there to hear their stories and, safe place, no judgment and support and those kinds of things, and we could have those conversations. And probably 201, every single survivor that I worked with had said something along the lines of, no one's ever just listened to me before. So I think that, how would you work with, a person or client that was bringing those kinds of experiences to you, where they hadn't been heard?
Yeah, and again, that happens with so many of the clients that I see, because that's what they feel like, is they're not listened to. And of course, part of that is they're not actually speaking out authentically. But the other part of that is it could be the relationships, or it could be that they're actually, the people in their lives aren't listening to them or aren't able to hear them through their own issues. So for me, it's more about, I always listen to my clients in a completely non-judgmental space where I'm not judging anything. They're free to say anything they want. And in fact, because I'm an intuitive, when the message comes through me for a client, often I say to them things that I don't even agree with. So I might have to say to someone, well, you're supposed to be very exploring of your sexuality over the next, however length of time it is, while you figure this particular thing out or something. And maybe for me, it's not something that I would agree with,
right,
depending on what my thought process was. But just when they actually understand that you're caring for them and that you're listening in this non-judgmental manner and that you're offering them advice that is specifically for their benefit and it's not going through my own filters, I think that they really, what I've seen anyway, and the response that I get is they respond so well. They feel comforted, they feel cared for, they actually do feel listened to. And when I can also teach them how to actually speak out and use their voice, then of course they're going to find that they're listened to more often.
Yeah. And what about if someone is in that place and they're not able to express themselves? Is there a way that they can kind of become that listener for themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if and in fact, that's part of the process is actually listening to yourself. So I like that you brought that up, Deborah. It's perfect. That's probably the most important part, is that you're listening to yourself first, and that's twofold. That's listening to the internal voice, your intuition, again, and of course it's listening to the words you speak and how you speak. So what are you saying? What are you putting out into this world? And really tapping into that piece as well, and then understanding that, did you actually listen to yourself? And I could phrase this by saying, when I taught search and rescue it was probably about 8 years, I think, that I was in the group at this point. And I was saying to everyone, I was teaching the team leader course, and I said to everyone, okay, so first of all, you look after yourself, then you look after your team, and then you look after the subject. So the subject is always last, because if you don't look after yourself, first of all, you can't help your team.
Right.
And if you don't look after your team, you can't reach the subject. So, it just became I was always speaking the same thing, blah, 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 just saying it off. And then one day I actually heard myself say it. And that's when I realized I had not been putting myself first in my life ever.
Oh, wow. That's an aha moment, huh?
It was huge. I think I almost stopped teaching, where I'm going, oh, what did I just say?
That's amazing.
Yeah, so literally actually listening to yourself speak and becoming that observer is really helpful.
Yeah. I was working with another kind of thought leader, and she said there's another voice in our head, and she called the voice the doubter. Do you think the doubter is related to our intuition, or do you think they're separate?
Yeah, I definitely think they're separate. The intuition is what I would call, say, our truth, our core, our actual being. And the doubter is, of course, the ego mind, which likes to tell us that things are fearful, or that things are painful, or that things aren't going to work out, or whatever the worst case scenario is. And really, it's trying to keep you safe in a way that it's been programmed to throughout your upbringing, but it's actually creating these blocks for you. So yeah, I would definitely say the two are separate entities.
and then we go, I have too many voices in my head, right?
Yes.
I don't know who to listen to.
Yeah.
Well, you have just had an incredible life, and you have an incredible amount of knowledge and experience to share with everybody. And like I said, I certainly do appreciate you coming in on my show. You are a successful business owner. You're a #1 international best-selling author. You have a full life coaching practice. You said you've written 8 books that are currently in the process of being published. What's next for you? What's in your future?
Yeah, wow. It's when you phrase it like that, I don't know what else is next. But yeah, there is really, after I sort of started blossoming when I went through that realignment with the adrenal fatigue, and I started creating. And so when I created Shortcuts to Spirituality and the other books, they all sort of work in alignment with each other. They're all synergistically related. And one of the programs that I actually ended up developing was called The Guru You, and it's going to be launching in February. It's going to be an online self-study program. So nice. I'm just currently editing the videos for the training right now. And that is going to work beautifully with Shortcuts to Spirituality, and it's also a great standalone. And essentially, it comes back to that, teaching people to reclaim their power and taking 100% responsibility for creating their own life experience. So it's based on the premise that for every question that arises within you, you also have the answer.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
So that will be coming out in February. And
wonderful.
In addition to
that's in a couple of weeks.
It'll be mid-February for sure.
February's closer than we think, right?
I know. It's like, we're halfway through January already.
I know. Where does the time go? Well, I was thinking that you say create your own life, and some people have issues or thoughts around the word create. And have you heard people say, I am not the creative type, I have no creativity?
Yes.
And how do you respond to that? What's a good way to get them open to that?
Well, because I'm so direct, I generally say that's a lie. And then from there, we discussed that creative energy is exactly the same energy that's from the universal flow. So it's sexual energy, it's creative, it's stimulating, it's all of those things. It's that alive energy that we are all born with and that we all have. So perhaps you're not a painter, you're not a poet, you're not a writer, you're not a photographer, whatever it is that you consider artsy or creative.
Right.
There's creativity expresses in so many different ways. When people are creating content or even in their job, whatever they're creating, if they're, they could be creating an actual physical product, that is creative energy. When you tap into any of that, that's creative. So I just ask that people are willing to explore that they are creative in a different context.
Yeah, and don't you think you can be creative in how you create your home?
Oh, yeah.
Or in your cooking, your meals?
Oh, all of it. It's all
how you manage your budget.
Yeah. Although creative accounting is frowned upon.
Yeah, it doesn't ever add up.
No.
There's always someone standing there with their hand out. Wait a minute. Yeah. But I was one of those people that said a long time ago, I'm not creative because I don't paint, and I don't sing, I don't dance, and I don't, I really never considered myself a writer. And in fact, many people would be surprised to hear that I never thought I would ever be speaking publicly. But here I am. So, I loved debate class in high school, but I hated speech class.
Interesting combination.
Yeah, I like the debate part, but the speech class scared me, witless. But so you can grow into those shoes, and if you want to, there's a way to do that. But thinking at that point when I was feeling the most stuck and the least creative, of course, was while I was still in that relationship. But I started reading some self-help books from some people that I had heard about and came to respect. And they were like, creativity is not just painting, not just writing. It can be how you take care of your family. It can be how you take care of yourself, and it can be expressed in a lot of ways. And it just kind of opened my mind to a different way to think of creativity. And my dad was a carpenter and my mom was a seamstress, and so many people would say, well, that's pretty it's very blue collar work, but in a lot of ways it's extremely creative too.
Oh, definitely.
Because my father could create things without blueprints, and my mom could look at a picture of a dress and she could cut it out and sew it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's true. That's artistry, but just of a different kind.
Yeah.
Recognizing that in you.
Yeah, and it's about moving it away from those labels too. I mean, it's funny because I actually used to say, "Oh, I'm not creative," and then when I went through that realignment, I realized how much of my creativity I'd been suppressing, which is why suddenly I'm, blossoming with all these projects.
Yeah.
And just it sort of started with reaching out, in the missing piece. And once I allowed myself to actually release that, and it felt good and it felt right, and I thought, okay, so I can create anything I want. And then I moved into, making the videos, and then I started as a contributing author to I Am Enough magazine, which is, of course, another writing, but it's a different style. It's,
right.
It is still creating.
Yeah.
And then I was actually, when you asked what was on my schedule, I've also been made the president of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce in my home province.
Awesome.
Thank you. And
that's wonderful.
It is. And I was thinking, wow, it's a very creative venture, because I'm creating, speakers coming and creating events and creating all this stuff. So it's really just another form of creation, even though it's more, it's different than writing, it's different than poetry, it's different than all the other stuff, but it's still creating. Yeah.
I think that's important. You just said an important thing, creating events. Mm-hmm. Many people don't think that's creative, but it's extremely creative.
Oh, for sure.
And another thing that you mentioned that I was thinking about was creating relationships.
Yes.
You develop creative skills. I think that's, giving people just a different way to look at creativity. And I know that some of the writing I ended up doing kind of was, I would say, motivated by a physical health kind of issue for me too. When you were writing, when you were in your bed and you couldn't do anything but write, how was that experience of writing for you?
Oh, it was so freeing and releasing and cathartic. It was literally all I could do. I mean, there was 2 months where I couldn't even leave the house because the anxiety was so bad. And it's funny to watch as an observer, because I knew there was nothing out there that was, harmful, but I could not move myself beyond the block at that time.
Right.
So just being able to write about the experience, because I also wasn't interacting with anyone. I wasn't on social media. I wasn't going out. I wasn't speaking with anybody on the phone. I was basically staying in the house, and my husband was helping me, and I would speak with my mom, and maybe one of my other girlfriends. But other than that, it was just me and the writing. So I found it so freeing.
So because of the lyrical introduction you gave to you, does that kind of writing just kind of flow from your pen? Do you kind of then wonder sometimes where that came from?
Absolutely. And I actually, like what you said when you say flow from the pen, it literally does, because I handwrite everything first. Even the content on my blogs, the content on my websites, everything is handwritten first.
Uh-huh.
And I allow that flow. And when you said that poetic entrance tonight, it was so funny because I was laughing. I was just finishing up a blog, and I said that in that blog I said I've been a little afraid of my poetic side. I was scared to be vulnerable and naked and raw, and
then I just exposed you.
Yeah, but it was perfect. It was perfect timing. And actually, what's really funny is on this Thursday I'll be presenting at the Inspired Word Cafe my poetry. So.
Awesome! Yay!
Yeah, I'll be a featured artist, and it'll be my first public reading, so it'll be pretty intense.
Yeah, well, you'll do well.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. It's such a, it's all synchronistic, just everything falling into place.
Yeah, so I like that term too, and I use that a lot when I'm trying to frame things and the way things occur in my life, the synchronicity. That's a really fun word for me.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a funny story about that. I usually write down things that I want to happen.
Yeah.
And I got that advice from one of my authors that I connected with, and said, write it down and look back, later, and you'll be surprised at how much of what you've written down has happened for you. Mm-hmm. So I have my youngest son. I have 8 grandkids from my 3 older kids, and my youngest son is married. And I told him, I said, I'm not trying to give you pressure, but I'm telling you what I wrote down. And I wrote down that I'm going to be a grandma this year. And I said, so I just want you to know that those things usually come true for me. So just telling you. Get prepared. It's going to happen this year for you, I think.
That's right. That's right. Although it's a little hard to set intention for others, isn't it?
It is. It is. But I'm giving them hints.
That's good.
Write it down and
That's
make
right.
So,
plant the seed.
That's what a mother does. Plant the seed. Exactly. I have no control over them, and I don't need to because they're great and wonderful human beings. But
I'm sure.
There's never enough grandchildren. I have 7 right now, and so 8 would be a perfect even number.
Yeah, you're so blessed. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight on my first show on Bull Radio Station. And I'd love to have
Thank you
later
for listening. You can reach Deborah at Deborah.
Sure.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that. And while you sit and rest for a minute in the green room, I'm going to tell the readers that this next week, January 17th through the 19th, I will be in Pomona, California, and I will be a workshop presenter and kind of a host of a trafficking on conference. It's called Southwestern California Conference Against Trafficking, and it is sponsored by a group that I am part of. It's a nonprofit called National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. And I'm one of the founding mothers and the program chair of that organization, and we are going to be in California, and the group of us, a couple hundred of us, getting together to talk about the impacts of human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking and all forms of violence. And I'm really excited about being there because I always love the networking piece of it. So if you're in Southwest California, Pomona, California, it's going to be held at the Sheraton there, and you still have time to register. So you can follow me on Facebook. You can find me on my website. That's available on my page. My website is Deborah K. Adams, SES.com. So just spell my name out, and it's DebraKAdams, and then SES, which stands for Self-Empowerment Strategies. So I'm so excited to have completed my first show on the Bold Radio Station. I look forward to a long and happy association here, and I'd love to have you come back and join me next Tuesday at the same time, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here on Bold Radio Station. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you for listening. You can reach Deborah at DeborahKAdamsMA@gmail.com or go to her websites www.sisses.net, www.DeborahKAdamsSES.com, www.DeborahKAdamsTheMissingPiece.com. See you next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Deborah SES. And remember, you are empowered.